It is 7 o'clock. I'll call this meeting to order. We do have a quorum. I just need an approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Aaron made a motion and Bob Oscar seconded it. Any questions? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, the same. Motion passes. Aaron, you want to read? I don't know who's out there.
The Owings School Board strives to provide an environment where students can be happy, healthy, and awesome in their educational pursuits. We believe that each student can graduate ready for college and/or a career. To do so, we will provide a safe, nurturing, and engaging learning environment that meets individual wellness, social, and emotional needs.
All right, and item 4 is any district resident who'd like to speak to any item on the agenda? And presentations.
All right, so I've got a kind of a run through of legislative updates. There's been a lot of activity this year in the legislature, things that are, I would say, fairly significant. They're stuff that happens every year down in Des Moines that impacts us at some level. But there's definitely some things that I think as board members you should just be aware of, and if some of them get passed or through, they're going to impact us in one way or another. Obviously there's political stuff here that you can talk about and ask questions on. But the bottom line is that the stuff that I've kind of brought forward here is, one, feels like it has legs. Funnel week was on last week, so it made it the first funnel. And so all of this stuff is currently being worked on in subcommittee or committee. So it's still very much alive. And then there's a second funnel coming up, I think, in another week and a half. So it's kind of got to make it through that before it can get through. And then there's the standing appropriation bills that they will approve last. And at that point, they have a tendency to kind of throw anything left on the table they want to get through into those standing appropriations. So in that essence, anything is really on par to be, kind of come back. So the biggest one, just to be aware of, probably saw it in the news, got passed and signed early on. Early February was the educational savings accounts. Had been signed by the governor. And essentially what this means is that there's going to be accounts created for anybody that wants to go to a private school in the state of Iowa. They do have to be accredited. We don't necessarily know what the accreditation process looks like per se. There was some pushback. It used to be with ESAs that there was some possibility of homeschooling and people potentially taking advantage of it. We argued in advocacy against them that there was a ripe opportunity for people to take advantage of that or to have fraudulent claims with the money that's there. So some of those things did get pulled out. The state's already hired a firm called Odyssey they went through an RFP process, and that firm's been hired to manage all of the ESAs. So that process is moving forward. 3 good things that came out of this process were amendments. The first one, actually 2 of them, TAG and TLC, they allow us some flexibility in terms of how we spend that money. We don't have a ton of TAG money. We likely still have a TAG program, a TAG teacher, and so that pretty much fills out all of that fund. So it doesn't provide us a ton of flexibility, but it's there if we need it. TLC does have a lot of flexibility, and we have a process that we've already got started to review our TLC protocols and what we're doing with TLC. When they originally wrote it and it got passed back in 2012, there was a lot of requirements. It was heavily regulated in terms of what you had to do, and some of those things maybe pulled the process away from the kids or away from local decision making, and we believe that we can make some improvements in those areas. We've surveyed staff. We have taken a couple different proposals to the district leadership team to kind of work on how can we utilize the flexibility we have in TLC to make some improvements. and the district leadership team is meeting on this Wednesday to kind of put together a final plan, a draft that I'll share with you guys following that meeting around kind of what are some tweaks and changes we can do within the TLC flexibility to make some updates. So an example is you have to have, well, to have a TLC position, you had to have been working in the district for 1 year before you can accept a TLC position. So that's no longer a thing. You don't have that doesn't have to exist anymore if you don't want it to. 25% of your staff has to be touched by or work within the TLC framework. It's a lot of people to manage and a lot of different components of the TLC program. We end up kind of creating things that maybe don't necessarily need to be created. So that doesn't have to be there anymore. We can kind of pull that back. That was the overwhelming results we got when we surveyed staff, was that our TLC program is too broad in scope and it needs to be narrowed. So there's some positivity that is coming out of that. And then the last piece that ESA law allows is expansion of the operational sharing through 2034. So we don't currently have any operational sharing, but it definitely, it moves that horizon out there further. So if we ever want to seek a sharing agreement with another school district for counselors, SBO, superintendent, transportation director, maintenance director, HR manager, there's an incentive for us to sustain, to achieve and reach and sustain those incentives. The other really big moving piece of the legislative session is a revisal of Chapter 12. So Chapter 12 is the backbone of public education. It is hundreds of pages long, and the matrix to simplify and make it easier to understand that the Department of Ed wrote several years ago for public schools is 86 pages long. But it outlines elementary English, what you have to have, elementary math, what you have to have, how many minutes of recess, how many minutes of PE, how many minutes of everything, how many CTE classes you have to offer, and what those look like. It is very comprehensive. And there's been some movement, some advocacy over the past few years to review Chapter 12, because it really hasn't been changed or updated significantly since the 1970s. And with the advent of online education, charter schools, now ESAs, there is certainly a drive to have some flexibility built into education. So some of the proposals that are on the table is that they're removing or changing some requirements in PE and foreign language. Now, I just read today that those have actually, they've kind of pulled back on those a little bit, adding in opportunity for snow days, allowing some community college time for instructional credits, allowing 2 sequential classes at once in a single classroom. So you could offer, the teacher is duly certified in multiple areas. You could potentially teach you could teach 2 classes simultaneously for dual credit. Or if you have 2 teachers that could team up to teach a dual credit course, there's some flexibility like that. Or even you get into some issues sometimes with like Spanish 3 and Spanish 4, where you're filling out a section size to find some efficiencies. So these are things we've advocated for years, but they don't really get a lot of attention because they're small tweaks, but they give us the flexibility we need from time to time to build a schedule that meets the needs of our students. And the last one up there, it's been hard to find a teacher librarian. Currently requires a master's degree to be a teacher librarian, so this specifically says that can be a certified teacher librarian or could have formerly worked as a public librarian, and specifically tells the Board of Educational Examiners to no longer require a master's degree to be a teacher librarian. So that is significant. The two big moving pieces in the LGBTQ world are the changes to how school districts interact with transitional students. So the one is school restrooms requires any K-12 student to designate multi-occupant restrooms, and this would also be locker rooms or changing rooms as being for one sex, and then prohibits a person from using the restroom as a changing area that does not correspond with the person's biological sex. There will have to be some work on this one, and then the other one, not the other one, this one in particular, because there's federal legislation out there that we have to follow as well under the Civil Rights Act that basically says the opposite. So we've run into these issues before where we get conflicting federal law and state law, and we kind of just wait for what our attorneys tell us to do. And then gender instruction prohibitions prohibits schools and other charter schools from including any instruction on gender identity or sexual orientation in K-6 education. Requires sex ed classes to be age appropriate and research based. This is a tough one. I would say on the surface, I don't know that we currently are doing anything in this realm, but I think the challenge of legislation, which will then create rules, which will then get given to us to follow, and the rules that we have to implement may impact board policy and some of those kind of things. But the defining of some of these components is really challenging. To be age appropriate, I think I don't think anybody wants to really argue against age appropriate, but what is age appropriate in some of these avenues? And it just becomes challenging to write rules and policies around them. And so again, I'm sure IASB will definitely weigh in, our attorneys will weigh in on the language to support some of these laws if they pass, and if they, when they would come to us to kind of work through as a policy lens, what that looks like for you guys. So the library kind of continues to get brought up as well. So there's some concerns about the literature that's in libraries, but it does require schools to establish a K-12 library program and then to ensure only age-appropriate materials are in those libraries. We already have policy in this area. All of our library materials are available online and can be searched by the public. It does require a teacher librarian and to direct the program at each attendance center, which we currently do. Not a lot of small schools don't necessarily have this if they kind of have a librarian on the books. So for some, it could definitely change what that potentially looks like. But again, there may be some updated policy language that we'll have to look through when it comes to some of these components. This is an interesting one. So would require every school board to have a student school board member or a liaison. So this board has had one before, and when I took over, it was still kind of a thing. Actually, and I was never opposed to it. I don't think the board's ever been opposed to it. The bigger challenge is finding a student that is not, to meet the requirements. They have to, have certain GPAs. They have to be of certain standing. They have to be, and these kids are typically very active. They're in sports. They're doing all kinds of things. And then to expect them to be regular members of the school board, it was challenging. They missed a lot of meetings. So in principle, I don't think this one is very concerning. In practice, this one is a challenge just because finding the right student that could be a student liaison and then, they have to make that commitment to be at board meetings is pretty challenging. I was not able to find it, but they were talking at a meeting I was at the other day about school board meetings too, that there's, maybe because it's not coming through on the school side, but there's talk about requiring 30 minutes of public comment at every public meeting, city, county, and school boards. Yeah, I said that. I said we would just lose all of our board members. Like no one would want to sit around for that. So hopefully that was just a random idea that someone threw out there, but we'll see. Sometimes they push crazy things through. some kind of small little things that are also still out there, but they're kind of getting overshadowed by some of the other stuff. Is so Senate File 480 would require only online public notice for public meetings and hearings. So we do all that anyway, but we wouldn't have to send our public notices and minutes and those kind of things to the paper for publication, which does cost the district money. And then House File 355 changes the license requirement to 10 years. You have a master's degree or above and you have 10 years experience. So I am big time in favor of this one. So instead of renewing my license every 5 years and having to take courses, that once you hit that threshold of master's degree and you've had 10 years experience, it just basically rolls over every 10 years and you just renew it and you just keep on going. All you're doing is paying $85 at Board of Educational Examiners for them to send you a new piece of paper. Actually, they don't even send you paper anymore.
No,
It's just
exactly.
electronic.
On a piece of paper with the embossing, you don't get that anymore.
I know. I want the fancy paper.
But the other one that's kind of crazy too is you can't do it, like in business, if you're gonna take business, you can take the class here, the course there to get your business degree, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you wanna get your master's, you gotta commit, you gotta go for it, there's no building
Right.
your continued education to get to that in teaching, right?
Correct.
It's weird.
It is weird. You can take, 50 hours randomly in continuing ed, but not have a master's degree. You have to actually go through a master's program, and most colleges require a minimum of like 24 hours within their program. Yes. Oops. Where did I go? Another really good one, I think. I'm not sure of the mechanics of how it would get paid for, but it would allow for student teachers to get paid while student teaching, which would be really great for student teaching. I've always thought it was really silly that student teachers pay tuition in like the $12,000, $15,000, $20,000 range to go work for free. and then I got to pay all that back. And then there are already a couple alternative pathways to getting a teacher license, but House File 255 didn't get into the details of it, but it creates kind of like an apprenticeship program to get a teaching license. So I think it's related to some of the work that they're doing. They did a pilot program this year with paraeducators working on getting their degrees and then getting teaching licenses. So I think this is similar in making it permanent. A couple ones that have been cut or didn't make it. Having a second count date. I don't know if you guys saw it in the news, but there was got a lot of media attention that banned margarine in school lunches. And then there's been some gun safety stuff. There is still one alive. I didn't put it on my notes. I'm not sure what will happen with it, but it gives boards the authority to allow some flexibility on allowing guns and ammunition in the district, depending on, there's some rules that would come with it in terms of like maybe being in school vehicles and what the intent and purpose was, and then also potentially that there could be some trained individuals on staff that could potentially have guns and ammunition. So again, not advocating for anything, just that's a piece that definitely the board would want to weigh in on at some point to, if that's a direction we want to go. Administrators must teach has died. And then the last one is the one we hope comes back and I would say has the best legs as a chance to come back as part of an appropriations bill. There was a lot of positive bipartisan talk around funding pre-K at 1.0 for students that are 200% below the poverty line. So it just makes sense. A lot of bigger districts have Head Start programs anyway, but there's also a lot of school districts that don't. And so it would be really good for kids and for pre-K kids. So the fiscal note on it is not significant. So it just makes sense that this would happen. So again, I thought it's not sure why it died, but it did for now. So hopefully this one comes back in an appropriation to get some people down there to say, hey, this just makes sense. Let's do this. So could help us. Wouldn't be a ton, but it'd be something. I bet we probably that $10,000-$15,000 probably we would see for something like that if they would get that passed. Most of our students that are at that level are already being served by Head Start, but there are a few that we, for whatever reason, we capture them in our pre-K program. Any questions you guys want to talk about?
What's the TLC acronym stand for?
Teacher Leadership Compensation. So, I mean, just maybe a little context for everybody too. So that's all of our instructional coaches are paid for out of that. Justin Post, who's a success coach at the middle school, is in that program. All of our curriculum leads get paid for out of that. We have a mentoring program that's paid for out of that. All in, it's about $450,000, right? Ish.
Yeah, ish. Yep.
And so, with the flexibility, that money still belongs to the teachers. It still has to be distributed to the teachers. We can't buy toilet paper, gas for buses, that kind of stuff. So it has to go to the teachers. But we have flexibility in terms of how we decide to spend it to hopefully move some pieces around to maybe get different results than what we're getting currently.
Does that come out of the management fund?
Nope, this comes from the state. This is a state silo of money that specifically is funded by the state. So in 2012, Governor Branstad at the time was a big pusher of this and got it through. It was a 3-year phase in before all districts got it. And then you had to write a grant, you had to do all this stuff to show that you were, and then there's a ton of accountability to it, a lot of reports and stuff. It slowly kind of faded away in terms of the accountability. Excuse me. But there is still some accountability with it, and some of that will go away too, which is okay.
So hypothetically, you would decide that perhaps the best thing for, let's say, some of our lower grade levels would be to reduce class size.
Mm-hmm.
You go out and hire another teacher with that money. Is there enough flexibility to do that?
I think so. Yep.
Any more questions? Moving on to reports. Ms. Jacobs.
Alrighty. Mr. Hadley did have to step out, so if we get to his report, I can always do his for him, if that's okay with everyone to keep things moving along. He let me know. Some special recognition on the activities side of things, though. You can see we had 5 teams receive the highest academic honor possible in the state. So not able to do those until after our first semester with all of our freshmen. So you'll see boys and girls cross country up there. So collectively, these groups had a combined GPA in an average above 3.25. So that's pretty cool. I had to order new plaques from the state because we didn't have any room on our old ones. So I'll get those labeled and put up in our trophy cases. So that's a really cool honor to have, in one of the highest ones that a lot of teams try to get because we are student athletes first. Under our happy updates, we had quite a few students qualify for nationals for BPA and DECA. Marissa Rogers and Jackson Weber for BPA, and then Jenna Ba, Alexa Berryman, Hannah Patrick, Riley Hartman, and then the Husky Mart is a group qualified for DECA. Large group speech, we had choral reading move on to the state level, and they received straight Division 1s, which is the highest rating you can receive. Unfortunately, they weren't picked for an all-state performance, but that's pretty awesome. And we did just receive back our ratings, or the all-state stuff for individual state speech. Again, nobody was selected for all-state, but out of the 7, I can't count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we had to go, 5 of the 6 received Division 1s, and 4 of those 5 who received Division 1s were straight Division 1s from the 3 judges. So a really great showing. They did a phenomenal job. And it would have been nice to have them go to all-state, but at the end of the day, they did great work, and that's all you can ask for. And you can see a snapshot of our little pep assembly we did to recognize those students going to nationals and state speech as well as nationals for archery. Under the healthy, all spring sports started today officially at the high school level, and then middle school track will start when we come back. So it's not too late still for any of those. If you know of a high schooler or a middle schooler who doesn't have plans on doing anything this spring, please get them involved. I was a soccer mom today. I drove the 15-passenger van with 9 students up to Fredericksburg for soccer, so it was pretty cool. They were very excited to be playing soccer up there, and even though it was an indoor practice, they were ready to rock and roll with the Sumner kids and the Chipola kids. If you didn't get a chance to see any of the concerts last week or the week before for band or choir, they were awesome. We didn't have our middle school choir concert because of Snowmageddon, but that will be on March 27th now, but the play was awesome. So the kids loved it, and we were able to get the 4th graders up for a dress rehearsal, which was really cool for them. And then lastly, under awesome, we have our all-conference honors now that the winter season is officially wrapped up with the state tournament. So we had 2 girls selected to the first team from basketball, Emma and Mackenzie. Hayden Becker was second team, and then Alexa and Maria had an honorable mention. For the boys, Connell Sauser was first team, and he was also selected to the all-sub-state team, which is a huge honor. Carter Jeans was selected to second team, and then Ethan and Garrett both had an honorable mention. And then Austin and Ashton both received conference honors for bowling. Austin on first and Ashton on second team after making their state appearances. So, pretty cool. That's all I have for the activity side of things.
Okay, Ms. Adams.
Right now, our big focus with O2 is getting ready for ISAST, making sure students know where they're testing, when they're testing. We do have, I think, 9 stations around the state centers we're going to around the state. We're also starting to work on practice tests with our online kids. And then starting to match up with the high school making some changes to their ELA curriculum. We want ours to match up so that students who make the switch at a semester have a smoother transition without losing any skills. Our Odyssey students continue to make growth. We still have 5 in the program. We have been able to start building in different games in the classroom. Josh got to play a week ago with the team. It was a great game while he was there. He left and then the losing didn't go so well for kids. But we've had a lot of growth with them. They're learning how to handle disagreements in a group with each other. And then Justin Post has been wonderful about taking them to the middle school for PE instead of him coming to them or them doing it online. We are now going up to the middle school for PE, so they are using the equipment. They have more activities that can help them burn through some of that energy.
The Space 10 and I won.
Yeah, they talked about you winning for a while. No, they owned Kentucky won, but they didn't like who was winning the next game.
All right, Ms. Hampton.
So the biggest news, I think, is we're able to celebrate 72% of our students showed growth in either reading or math from fall to winter testing window. That's pretty exciting. I think it would have been higher, but for some reason our 7th and 8th graders really had a hard time showing up for the second set of testing. So we have some plans to make sure that it's a better turn out this next time. Like Ms. Jacobs mentioned, Friday our 7th and 8th graders performed Hooray for Justice, and I was at the night showing and they did a fabulous job. It made me giggle a lot, so it was great to see the kids engaged in the extracurricular activities. Like I mentioned last month, our task force worked on the cell phone protocols, and they were able to create a plan. So I did include the link. You don't have to click on or anything, but if you wanted to on your own. But the big thing about this is the whole staff is supportive of it. Everybody agreed to it. I said we couldn't do it unless we were 100%. Couldn't even be at 98% because that it still doesn't work. And so we plan to roll it out on the 21st with an all-school assembly. And what I like is that the kids are scared. They think that everything's going away. So it's okay. It's a little weird, but good for the citizens. We're preparing for ISASP, and this is what comes along with that whole week. We have in the schedule some goal setting that we'll be doing, a hype video that will be done from our Husky Council members to really send the message home how important these tests are. And then lastly, on Friday last week, our BLT met with AEA, and Josh was there as well, and just really looking at the growth that we've made, and though we know there's a long ways to go, just to celebrate the things that we've done so far. So yeah, things are going well.
On to Mr. Hadley.
Good evening. Our secretaries and guidance have been working really, really hard to get into classrooms and start to nail down schedules. I think we've got, when I checked this morning, we only have 12 students left to get their rosters figured out for next year. So that's exciting to think about, and also kind of drives some of our systemic changes as we just try to fit the right pathways for students. As we kind of move down, thanks. Just kind of look back over the winter. We had some really awesome extracurricular activities last week. We were able to, I think for the first time, kind of honor our state archery participants. Many of them qualified for nationals, and we actually did that. We invited the elementary, junior high, and high school archery students to come up, and I think the third grade team won like first overall, and like it was awesome. Kind of cool. They got a big trophy and all these things, but we got to recognize them in front of our high school. I think it's great. Sometimes our clubs get disassociated, so it was good to bring them back in and kind of support them as well as state speech, which was just last Saturday. We had 6 go, 3 scored straight ones. Unfortunately, none of them made it to All-State. We just checked the results tonight, but did really well. We also recognized our BPA and DECA students, who also, we had several qualify for nationals there as well, and FFA moving into districts. So a lot of stuff going on. Jamie probably mentioned a lot of it as well, but really cool stuff. Attendance, as you know, big district focus. Last year we were at 89%. Currently we're at 93% at OHS. So it's really working to make a difference. I got a text from one of our teachers, actually just last week, said, it's made all the difference to have kids here and be present. So it's a big deal. Water Bottle Wednesday is back. So kind of get kids hydrated. We find that they're happy, healthy, and awesome when their brain cells are fully functioning. Great water. Mr. Vanderloop's health class completed CPR. We do that with our seniors, but we tried to, yeah, I can demo it. These are the brand new stickers that, hey, congratulations for staying hydrated. Congratulations.
Yeah.
I don't know if that really counts. So and then, so normally we do have all of our seniors go through CPR, but Mr. Vanderloop's really been trying to catch them earlier, and I love this approach. The thought is, why wait till our kids are out the door before they know how to respond to an emergency, right? So he's also been taking them around to look at all of the AEDs and defibrillators and kind of talk through those. It was a good education for me. I caught them walking around one day. So what are you guys doing? Oh, we're looking for the AEDs. I was like, oh yeah, I should probably, memorize that as well. So kind of rolling through there. And then down to our awesome stuff. You can see Coop there with the mannequin. He did a good job. The Husky House. This has been an ongoing project. And Mr. Sorensen stepped in and did an amazing job. This is the closest we've been to kind of looking like a real house. They just last week put in carpet and vinyl flooring. You can see Carson here. He's actually really good at seaming carpet. He learned a new skill he didn't know he had. They've been working really hard. We've had less students this year, and I reduced some of the time to focus on some other parts of our program. And so these kids have come in and just really done a great job just picking up and going. And we're really hopeful to list yet still late this spring, early summer, and get it on the market and get one of our Hawaiian families a brand new place to live. If you've ever searched for a house in Hawaii, it's challenging. Some of you know the realty market better than others, but I think it's going to be a great starter home for a family. Then lastly, like everybody else, we did our data review, went really well. really looking at progress towards proficiency in math and ELA. Our growth is really good. It's just getting our students proficient. So our students grow when they get to the high school, but we still need to get them to that line of overall proficiency. And of course, our special education population is pretty high. So how do we continue to support those needs? Any questions?
All right, thank you. Public hearings, there are none.
Nope.
So discussion items, budget.
Okay, so I had Michael populate. We did get John Parker was able to finalize all of the county rollbacks and everything got done just this week. Today I got today I got the email? Is everything's
Today
done?
we got the email, yep, Fayette County got after it a little earlier than other counties, but the last of the holdouts in the state got done today, so. Jeff Parker sent out the email saying said the evaluation should be accurate, so. Yep, so we, that was the majority of what we were waiting on. There wasn't too much tweaking that went on besides having those numbers updated. So what you're looking at is what'll be published in the newspaper ahead of our hearing on April 3rd, so.
So based on our discussion last time, we didn't hear a lot of consensus one way or another. So we went back to just where we felt the district was in the best position to get everything that we needed, not ask the public for more than we thought we needed, and kind of thread the needle on everything. And so this lays everything out. The publication is not a great look at how school finance actually works, but it's what we're required to do. But the number that I think most people would be interested in hearing, and I think we'll be looking at in a publication, is the tax rate, the proposed tax rate, which is 13.561, which is a reduction about 30 cents on every $1,000 of $100,000. It would be $30 saved in a $100,000 house. You guys can do the math from there. So it's not insignificant. I think we think it's adequate, and we would accept any other discussion or comment, and then we'll take those comments and kind of decide where to go on the budget we publish. Remember, you can't, once we publish, you will vote on what we publish. You cannot go up. You can only go down. So if we publish here, we cannot adjust it up at that point. You could adjust it up. You have to have another public hearing and another budget vote. And the certification has been bumped back to April 30th. That's probably insignificant, but if you did need more time, you have more time. So I think we're kind of just looking for any kind of general comments of this looks good, hate it, love it, questions. Attaboys from Michael.
One thing I will mention from the conference last week is our debt service might look a little different going forward. So right now, we have it built out as what we owe on the bond, but it sounds like.
Which item is that, Michael?
It would be on the top, it's line 18. Transfers in,
Okay.
because we basically make a transfer from our save account to pay the bond, and you pay the bond through debt service. So then on the bottom half, it'd be line 37 is transfers out, but also line 34 is debt service. It sounds like the way that they're kind of restructuring the way debt is assessed is that like our lease that we have with access systems for our copiers might wind up having to be paid through the debt service fund. So it's just another entry, but it'll make these numbers look a little different potentially next year. So we'll get some guidance from the auditors on that, but that it doesn't mean we brought on any additional debt beyond our bond. It's just the way that
we're required to do it for GASB. The
Once a
Audit.
lease is so long, is that what they do? They
Yeah.
categorize it?
Yeah. And then there's a lot of stuff changing. They also kind of advised us, there's a lot of stuff changing on how we book the debt, like amortize it and stuff, but that has no bearing on this. So that's all kind of, academic stuff that we do to make the auditors happy, so. But capitalizing and that kind of stuff, so, but.
Any questions about any of the numbers you're seeing in there? Well, I mean, if everybody's generally happy with it, this is what we'll, and it's not a vote tonight. Michael and I received your comments and take them into account, and then we'll publish the budget based off of your feedback. So if there is none, this is kind of the direction we'll go, and then you have an opportunity to vote on this April 3rd. There is also on the agenda, there's also public notice of the FY23 reestimate. Again, this is a few years back. We started doing this on an annual basis. You're required by code to do a publicized reestimate if you have any of those funds that have a 10% fluctuation from what you published in FY23, so last spring, and what we think reality is going to end up. So we do an exercise every year to reestimate, and then if you hit the 10% mark, you have to republish and you have to revote. It's our practice to do it every year anyway. The bonding and where we put the bonding and expended the bonding over the course of the fiscal years and how those fiscal years fluctuated year to year really put us in a position where we needed to do it every year. We hope that we don't have to do it every year, but we will do it every year. So if that'll follow my nonsense there. We do have a requirement this year to publicize and do a budget amendment for the current budget, FY23. So that's those numbers. There's not a lot to mess around with here, other than we take current receipts, what we think the rest of the fiscal year will get us till June, and that's educated guess based off the information we have at hand, and we republish what we think we're going to end up with. So it's far closer to reality than what the actual budget is, kind of. Okay.
On concrete.
Let's talk about concrete. All right. So in our budget, and from conversations we've had previously about safe funding and expending money, one of the highest priorities for the board has been to upgrade concrete projects and make sure we have functioning and well taken care of concrete across the district. So 6 years ago, we had a facilities committee, and one of the last project we have not addressed on that list was paving the high school parking lot. So last summer, when we engaged with Clapsaddle Garber and Associates to do the concrete around Little Husky Playground, we also signed a contract for them to evaluate and begin design processes for redoing the street in front of the high school, paving the parking lot in the high school that is gravel, and then assessing and looking at the parking lot and drainage issue between this building and the bus barn. So they sent us some designs, and actually, so we kind of paused everything until this spring. But it's time to kind of start looking at this again. So this is one of the designs that they proposed that we like. as you look up there, this includes elevated crosswalks, streets, drop-off stuff. This would require the city partnering with us to redo some of the street work. And in the meantime, they would also do a whole new water main underneath there. The project, the city's indicated they're not interested in putting this as a priority in their bigger picture of where to fix the streets in our community. So we have to kind of maybe go a different direction. In talking with Klapsal-Garber, it should not prevent us from addressing the needs of the parking lot. So I put a little bit modified version in front of you guys with some of my notes on it and some kind of just categorized areas. So we're going to meet with Matt, the primary engineer for Klapsal-Garber, next week. And I believe that it'll cost more than what we have budgeted to spend on concrete to do all the curbing, all the driveways, all the little nodules in between, the drainage, and then lighting as well would have to be run throughout all of that in 1 year. But I do believe, and we're going to ask Matt about phasing it. So could we this year basically do all the infrastructure, all the grading, all the curbing, change the inlets and the outlets where our students and fans for ball games would come in and out of the parking lot. Mr. Hadley can tell you horror stories of that north entrance that's there now and kids pulling right out into that four-way intersection, how it's unsafe. And so this would redirect that traffic down to that other street.
I love shit happening today.
It's a five-way intersection.
It is.
With the entrance to the parking lot.
Yeah. Oh, then and kids cross that street there both directions. So anyhow, on the list there, I put in what I kind of consider priorities, and I put them in order in terms of how I would ask them to evaluate costing the project out for kind of this year, and then what could be left for next year or future years to kind of wrap it up. The goal, I think, would be to get everything done except for the flat work. So all the design, all the grading, all the curbing, and all the drainage in the first year. And then year 2, or whenever we have the finances to do it, maybe it's year 3, we come back in and just do the flat work and the painting on top. So that would include sidewalk, those changing the entrance location, so that's curb cuts and some paving in those areas. There's stormwater management that has to be taken care of with that retention pond, and then there's some draining within the parking lot itself that would have to be designed. And then the interior curbing and walkways would have to be installed. And then if we can get the lighting and cameras done, we get a lot of requests for cameras in the parking lot from the Owine PD insurance companies with kids doing hit and runs or bumping into somebody or that kind of thing. So we do have cameras in the front of our building that work intermittently, but with new lights out there, we would have the capability of putting in more cameras that are more directional, just to keep our students safe. And if you're putting the lights up, adding cameras is not a huge extra added cost. And then the last priority being just getting the actual concrete down. And then on the right side there, I put in some notes. So design A refers to the parking lot itself. They estimated $81,000 of design costs for all of that, and we've already spent $23,000 of that. And then design B, which is the street and all the crosswalks and all those kind of things, which we're not going to do. We've already paid $25,000 of that, of $144,000 of design costs. A lot of those costs, they were up here constantly last summer with surveying equipment, measuring equipment. I mean, they were doing topographical stuff. They were measuring drainage issues, and I mean all kinds of things. So it's not just design work in the sense of like sitting on a computer and drawing things out. They had a lot of time and energy put into getting to where they've gotten. So that legwork is done. Michael and my hope, I think, is to go to them and maybe, since things have kind of changed when we wrote the original contract, is potentially write a new contract with what we have left remaining, renegotiate the costs based off of our investment we've already put into it, and see what's left based off of the priorities I've listed here and any priorities that you guys would have or want to change or adjust. So, any feedback on any of that?
Sounds logical.
That's what-
But when you do say this A design, the $23,000, that's not the total cost of the project itself.
No, that's just they just estimated $81,000 of design costs from start to finish, and that includes the original contract included them being like the construction manager, so working with the contractors to see the project all the way through. I don't know that we need to continue that agreement. So that's one of the things that we're going to negotiate and maybe pull back off the table so the design costs can come down significantly. And we can just get the design with what's left.
We don't have a retention fund now, right?
No, kind of do. That bottom corner of the gravel lot kind of serves as a retention pond.
Is that what they consider the requirement, or is that what they want to put in the project?
They considered it a requirement based off of common current practices with that volume of, because the entire parking lot from the south end would slope back to that north end. And the city, when we met with them, indicated that that would be a requirement that they would require of the design, because they don't have the infrastructure. If all of that is drained in this hard surface, all that water is going to come out that storm, out of that entrance there and go right into the storm sewer, and they don't have the capacity to handle it.
Yeah, by making that curb cut, we're opening up our current retention pond.
Yes.
So if we would move forward on phasing and you are thinking lighting, we're probably gonna want to do interior curbing at the same time.
That's why I kind of paired them up.
Have you ever heard of any insurance company granting anything to a school to put up cameras if we've got a lot of losses by any?
I don't know.
It's companies that, would sell a lot of insurance and all, and maybe they'd be interested in throwing a little bit towards the camera project.
Certainly be worth asking. I've also heard of Alliant Energy throwing lights at projects,
Oh, okay.
like street lights.
Any other discussion?
Okay, we're good.
Okay, well, we're moving on to consent agenda items.
I move to approve the consent agenda items as presented.
I'll second.
Bob Cald made the motion and Aaron seconded to approve the items as presented. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, the same, motion passes. Item 11 is A, the online bill fee.
Yeah, so I said I'd come back if I needed you to reassess that, and I do need your help with that. So I came at it at 4%, thinking that was, with 3.5% and a 35-cent fee, that's our cost to do it. We need a little more than 4% because at 4%, the minimum fee, the minimum transaction amount is $70. And a lot of folks don't put $70 at a time on their lunch tickets or, the enrollment fees or whatever. If we raise it to 5%, that opens the door to $24 as the minimum online transaction amount. So I think the folks that use it will be willing to pay the 5%, and it gets the cost down. And again, the e-check, it still only costs them 35 cents if they do it that way. They don't pay 5%. So anyway, that's the explanation there.
Recommend approval.
I'll make a motion to approve the adjustment for the minimum transaction fee to 5%.
Second.
Aaron made the motion and Erica seconded to approve the item as presented. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, the same. Motion passes. B is to approve the agreement with OCEA.
So the negotiating team and myself and Michael met with OCEA's negotiating team last Monday, and in 40 minutes we had reached a deal. So no second meeting, very fast. 4.4%, all of it basically going to the base salary. So it ends up putting $1,400 of money on the base, and then goes throughout the salary schedule we approved several years ago, making the new base salary $42,400. Not the top of our conference, but we are close. So this will help us be competitive in hiring new teachers. Recommend approval.
I'll make the motion to approve the agreement with OCEA, increase the package of 4.404% with a base salary of $42,100.
Second.
Bosco made the motion, Aaron seconded to approve the agreement as presented. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, the same. Motion passes. Well, good job on that. 40 minutes is gotta be a record.
Has to be.
Item 12, reports. Michael.
Okay, mine's pretty short and sweet. OCA settled, happy about that. OSSA has tentatively reached agreement, so we're close. And budget will be brought to the board for the April 3rd hearing. So we'll get that published and everything and make sure our ducks are in a row there for those requirements. And then the spring conference took place last week. Nice opportunity, saw colleagues. Hope it doesn't conflict with negotiations next year. So I'd like to be in on those, but it's just the way it works sometimes. So they bumped it up a couple of weeks this year, so maybe next year they'll put it back to where it was. So, and we won't have snow. So I was down there a little longer than I anticipated. So yeah, so that's it for me. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Ray.
Nothing major to report in terms of other than what's kind of you've seen tonight and the stuff that we've been working on. Parent-teacher conferences happen tonight and tomorrow. I've been able to meet with some of our board members individually about the budget and some questions. And one of the ideas that came up was two ideas that came up actually. I just want to kind of put out to the board, and we can work on this in the future if we want. But this is just something to think about. Providing more of a structure opportunity for board members to get into our buildings, kind of do some walkthroughs, and kind of be visible to our staff and students, and then just kind of get your eyes on what modern education looks like, see some of the challenges our teachers are facing, some of the joys and celebrations and fun things that are happening as well. So I'm going to look at maybe in April, early May, kind of maybe put an opportunity together, and if anyone wants to take advantage of it, and then this is something we can probably do more seriously in the fall and early winter next year as the school year gets rolling. And the second thing is maybe putting together some subcommittees to maybe work on a few different projects around that the board has to kind of undertake. So we have the ability as a board to subdivide ourselves to do all kinds of work, take on different projects. And just with the new faces on the board, give board members an opportunity to dig in and get their hands really dirty around some topics, to learn some things about what the board does, learn some things about the school, get in the weeds and kind of have a voice on some of that action. And as we train and bring on new leaders, I think this is going to be an important part, as we're likely to probably see some of our other veteran board members maybe not running again. So it's important for us to build that leadership capacity amongst our board. And so just something to think about, that we have that capacity to do that work. So I haven't given it too much thought in terms of like what those subcommittees would be. But certainly as we talk about structure and meetings and that kind of stuff, those are opportunities that we can certainly take on.
Alrighty, on to discussion. Bowska. Erica. Gosh, I group jump. Nothing. All right, upcoming meetings.
I'm for sure I've mentioned it. If I haven't, next Tuesday, so the day after our spring break, we have Joe Beckman. He's a nationally known speaker coming to speak to all of our buildings during the day, and then in the evening he's staying. He's going to do a community event. He's just kind of a fun rah-rah guy, kind of pump you up, just get you thinking about adult decisions and kids and that kind of thing. Really good speaker. So that starts, there's a walking taco supper at 5:30, and I think he talks at 6:15 or 6:30. Jamie, do you know?
We will start dinner at 5:30, and then he will start speaking at 6:30. We'll
Okay.
have childcare available starting at 6:15 to 7:45. His speech will last approximately an hour, so that'll give families 15-ish minutes to maybe stick around, ask any questions and things like that. So we have some high school volunteers lined up, so they'll be paid with food and silver court hours. Yeah, an appreciation.
I mentioned earlier our special meeting on April 3rd for the budget hearing. There will be no reports that night. It'll just be the public hearing for the budget and then the action item to approve the budget. We will also have a few other small action items to throw on there as well. Hopefully the OSSA agreement will probably have non-union contract agreement on there.
There's some resolutions with the budget too, so.
Yep, a lot of boilerplate stuff,
Yeah.
nothing of major consequence. I think those things are major consequence. I shouldn't say they're not,
Right.
but
Right.
nothing new to consider and have a long meeting just in terms of planning your time. And then regular meeting on the 17th. And then we've scheduled the Teacher of the Year celebration that's in concert with Rotary, Business After 5 with OCAD at Wings Park on April 26th, 5 o'clock.
I need a motion to go into closed session.
I move the board to a closed session to evaluate superintendent as provided under Iowa Code 21.15I. Motion to evaluate the professional competency of an individual whose appointment, hiring, performance, or discharge is being considered when necessary to prevent needless and or irreparable injury to the individual's reputation, and that individual responds to closed session.
Just need a second.
I'll second.
Bob Call made the motion, Aaron seconded to go into closed session. I do have to do roll call. Bob Call?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yep.
Erica?
Yes.
Bob Bowska?